Growing up, I always felt a little different from my family. It wasn't just in the way I looked, but in how I thought, acted, and reacted to things. My parents used to joke that I didn't quite fit in, but as I grew older, the jokes turned into something more serious. They started saying things like, "You're not like us," or worse, "Maybe you were never really one of us." I used to laugh it off, but deep down, it hurt. You can't shake the feeling of being the outsider in your own home, especially when it comes from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. As a kid, I didn't question much. Families have their quirks, and every child is told they're unique in some way. But as the years went by, the small differences began to pile up. I didn't share my parents' eye color or hair color. My features looked more like distant relatives, or maybe no one at all. While my siblings had inherited my father's brown eyes and my mother's soft curls, I stood out: lighter eyes, different complexion, and a personality that didn't quite mirror anyone else in the family. By the time I was in my late teens, the tension had become something I couldn't ignore. I overheard things, whispered conversations, my name followed by silence, and once, when an argument broke out between my parents, my mother's voice cracked as she said, "You can't hide it forever." That sentence stuck in my mind like a splinter. Hide what? Family resemblance is one of those things we take for granted. Studies show that about 90% of people can identify close relatives just by facial similarity. But sometimes, DNA has a story that the eyes can't see. When I went to college, the idea of not belonging still haunted me. I studied psychology, trying to understand family dynamics, but what I really wanted to understand was myself. Then one day, during a genetics course, we learned about direct-to-consumer DNA testing kits. The concept fascinated me, that in a few weeks, a simple saliva sample could map out your entire ancestry and even identify biological relatives. It wasn't about proving anything, at least not at first. I just wanted to know more about my heritage, my roots. But deep down, I knew it was about more than curiosity. It was about identity. When the kit arrived, I took the test quietly, without telling anyone. I mailed it off and tried to forget about it, but the waiting period was excruciating. 3 weeks later, the results landed in my inbox. I remember hesitating before clicking the email, my heart racing. And then, everything I knew about my life changed in a single moment. The report said I was a 99.9% match to my mother. But there was no genetic connection to my father. None. Zero. The system even flagged it, suggesting a non-paternity event. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I had to put the laptop down. It wasn't an error. The data was clear. The man I'd called my father my entire life wasn't biologically related to me. The room felt smaller after that. My childhood memories started replaying in my head, but they all felt different now. Colder, distant. The times my father had treated me differently, the subtle favoritism toward my siblings, the words, "You re not one of us," suddenly carried a weight they never had before. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront them? Should I keep it to myself? According to studies, nearly 1 in 25 people discover unexpected family results through DNA testing. It's more common than anyone realizes. But knowing that didn't make it easier. It just made me feel like one more statistic in a world full of hidden truths. A few days later, I decided to talk to my mother. I showed her the results, expecting shock, maybe denial. But instead, she broke down crying before I could even finish. It was true. She admitted that years ago, before she met my father, she had a brief relationship. She got pregnant, but thought my father would never find out. And he didn't. Not at first. But when I was born, the resemblance was impossible to ignore. They agreed to raise me as theirs, but the truth had never really disappeared. It lingered, unspoken, poisoning the air over the years. I asked her why she never told me, and she said something I'll never forget. I thought love was enough to erase the truth. But the truth doesn't fade. It waits, patient and silent, until the right moment to resurface. When I confronted my father, it didn't go as well. He looked at me for a long time, his face unreadable, then simply said, "I always knew." There was no anger, no shouting, just a quiet resignation. He said he had tried to accept me, to love me the same way he loved my siblings, but he couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't his. I wasn't angry at that moment. I was just broken. Because all those years of emotional distance, of feeling unwanted, suddenly made sense. Family secrets like this are more common than people realize. Recent studies suggest that in certain regions, up to 4% of children are unknowingly raised by a non-biological parent. But beyond statistics lies the human cost, the confusion, the identity crisis, the emotional scars. When the foundation of your identity is built on a lie, everything feels uncertain. I spent weeks processing what happened. I went through old photos, memories, birthdays, holidays. Everything that once brought me comfort now carried a different meaning. But I also found something unexpected amid the chaos: clarity. For the first time, I knew the truth about who I was. I decided to track down my biological father. It wasn't about replacing anyone or reopening old wounds. It was about closure. When I finally found him, the meeting was surreal. He didn't know I existed. The look on his face when I told him was a mix of shock and regret. He explained that he and my mother had lost contact and he'd never known she was pregnant. He apologized repeatedly, but I wasn't looking for apologies. I just wanted to know him, to know where I came from. It's strange how DNA, something so small and invisible, can carry so much power. It defines our biology, but it doesn't define our worth. My parents may not have been honest, but they raised me. They gave me education, love in their own way, and the chance to build my own path. Over time, I learned that family isn't just about blood. It is about the people who stay, who choose you even when it's hard. The experience also made me more aware of how identity can shape mental health. Studies show that people who experience sudden revelations about their parentage often face heightened anxiety, depression, and trust issues. It's a psychological earthquake. The world you thought you knew shifts beneath your feet. But like any earthquake, there's rebuilding after the destruction. Over time, I forgave my mother. She was young, scared, and made choices she couldn't undo. My father, the man who raised me, took longer to come around. But after a while, he reached out. He said he realized that biology didn't erase the years we'd shared, the lessons he'd taught me, or the person I'd become. That conversation healed something in both of us. Now when I look at families, smiling faces, similar eyes, shared laughter, I don't just see surface resemblance. I see the layers of truth, sacrifice, and secrets that make families what they are. DNA may reveal the facts, but love determines the bond. I often think back to that first email, the one that shattered everything and yet somehow gave me the clarity I'd been searching for. The irony is, I spent my whole life feeling like I didn't belong, and it took science to prove that I actually did, just in a way no one expected. Because no matter how complicated the truth is, it's always better than living in a lie. What I learned from all of this is that identity isn't fixed by genetics alone. It's built through experiences, choices, and relationships. The DNA test gave me facts, but life gave me meaning, and in the end, that's what defines who we really are.